Mike, Chris, I appreciate both of you hopping on with me to do this Eastern Conference Final. Big matchup, biggest game of the year for both teams to decide who's going to go to the MLS Cup final. Is it going to be Inter Miami making it to their first MLS Cup, or is it going to be New York City FC making it to their second MLS Cup in the last 4 years? 2021, last time they won. Let's start with Chris. Chris, before we get into the game itself, I want to talk about how your team, got here this season. How impressed have you been with Miami through this playoff run? Because we know in 2024, man, they got bounced in the first round versus Atlanta United, but it's been a totally different story in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, last year, it's funny because a lot of people that watch the team closely would say last year's team was better than this year's team. We have a more experienced coach last year. So you think, well, we should be anteed up for the championship. But we ran into Brad Guzan, and the rest is history. Now, this year, it's been sort of off and on towards the end, but I think the best part right now is that we're hitting our stride in the right direction. I mean, this guy, for example, Tadeo Allende, just to throw a name out there, that guy was a nothing burger in the middle of the entire season, and now he's just shot up like a rocket, and it's working at the right time for sure.
Hey, if you're enjoying the video, make sure you give it a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Our goal is to hit 12,000 subscribers by MLS Cup Final Day, which is less than 2 months away. A lot of exciting playoff games ahead of us, and we have real momentum, so I think we could hit that goal. So make sure you subscribe if you haven't already and hit that little bell notification so you never miss any of our videos. Now, back to the video. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that they've definitely been able to exercise their demons and be able to succeed a lot better in 2025 than they were in 2024. And I agree. A lot of people, including myself, thought last year's team was better than this year's team. But this team has made it further, and that's all that matters at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Mike, New York City FC. This is a team that has been on upset alert a couple times, right? They're kind of the dark horse of the MLS Cup playoffs. They're the lowest seeded team of the remaining clubs. They were last round as well. Are you surprised by how far they've made it in the playoffs in 2025? Were you expecting a run like this?
No one was expecting a run like this, especially given the injuries that they suffered in Charlotte and then in the international break. This is different from Miami. This is or at least starting the season, this was a worse team to start the season than last year. They lost Santi Rodriguez, who was a key figure, and this season really turned around. Towards the end of the season, when they signed players like Aiden O'Neill, Nicolas Fernandez-Marcao, and Raul Gustavo, and it's going to be a battle on Saturday. But I think as an NYCFC supporter, you got to like your chances because of what you just did to Philadelphia Union.
No, I agree. And how much of a difference do you think Pascal Jansen has been for this team versus Nick Cushing in 2024, 2023? And I think he was there in 2022, if I'm not mistaken. But to come in here and just change things immediately, I mean, he's been incredible, man.
Yeah, well, the one thing that really showed a lot in the game against Philadelphia was the and this was discussed on the broadcast, the intelligence of the players. So what Jansen has done, first of all, he's given them some freedom. A lot of the players have talked about during different press conferences how they feel a little bit unlocked because Nick Cushing's style was very strict, very rigid. Every time that the team repossessed the ball, it was go back to the center backs and then build from the back. And with Jansen, there's a lot more directness, a lot more freedom to attack the way you want. And you've seen this against Charlotte. That deciding match, 3 goals on counterattacks. So it's been completely night and day. It's almost a shame you have to compare the two. I think a lot of people would like to forget the Cushing era of NYCFC.
I certainly would. I was very disappointed with his time at New York City FC. But I also want to point out to both you guys and to our audience that both of these managers are first-year coaches with their team. They're brand new to the league. They never coached here before. All 4 remaining teams in the MLS Cup playoffs are first-year coaches in Major League Soccer. So that's really cool to see that these guys have been able to make an impact right off the rip and been able to help their team.
Oh, you're good.
Yep, sorry. But they've been able to make an impact on their team immediately in 2025, right off the rip. Chris, Javier Mascherano, we talked about him. Me and you talked about this, and I've talked about it with Danny and Solana, how frustrated we've been with him in 2025, especially because he's so up and down. You talked about how people like last year's team better, Tata Martino, the maturity, the experience. But man, we got to give him credit. The last game at Cincinnati, he made some changes that a lot of people thought he wouldn't, and it paid off in a big way for them with their dominant win.
Well, I think that's the turning point when it comes to the view on Mascherano at this point. Because before this game against Cincinnati, everybody was ready to send Javier Mascherano packing, okay, on a one-way flight anywhere he would like. But because he had the sack to be able to make the decision and bench, I mean, regardless of what people say about his scoring output, Luis Suarez, he has had a huge contribution to this team with assists, with playmaking, aside with Lionel Messi. But he made the decision to sit this guy and play Silvetti, who from the moment that everybody laid eyes on him was a super impact player. And now you see how much of an impact he is and he has with so many minutes. So as far as Mascherano and his viewpoint, a lot of the fans are actually liking the fact that he made that decision. So I think even at this point, the expectation is still MLS Cup or bust, but he's won over a lot of the fan base. That's 1,000% for sure.
Yeah, and I think with what he's been able to do, he's guaranteed himself, regardless of what happens from this point forward, another season, and he probably deserves it. I mean, he's a first-year coach, so I think he deserves at least another season, and he's hit his stride at the most important part of the season. So yeah, I'm impressed with what Javier has done.
And just to add something to that, because it's a little weird of a situation, right? You put Mascherano in this situation with a couple decent stars and a couple piece players. You'd say he's guaranteed for a lock next season. But the guys that he's got to coach for are big names. Lionel Messi, like we're talking about big names, Busquets, Alba, all these other guys. Like I think because of the stature of players, I feel like, yes, there is a possibility he keeps his job next year. But I think that it's still out there that, hey, look, you got to go all the way with these guys.
No, I agree. And I'm curious. I feel like we'll get into the predictions of this game, but I feel like the stars are aligning for Inter Miami. But we'll see because Mike, New York City FC, we talked about this earlier. They're the underdog. They've been the dark horse so far. Winning against Charlotte FC was a team that I was a little worried about in this playoff because they're a team that can make things frustrating for opposing teams. And when they beat them in a best of three, I thought, okay, well, maybe New York City FC's for real. But then you mentioned about an injury. Alonso Martinez, their leading scorer on their team. When they lost him, I thought, oh, man, this could be bad. It didn't make a difference. They went into Philadelphia and beat the number one team in the league, Supporters Shield winning team. And I thought they could do that. If they had Alonso Martinez, I thought they definitely could because Philadelphia doesn't really have that star player. They're just a good collective group of guys. But I feel like New York City FC is this team that now punches above their weight. You can't take them lightly. And Nico Fernandez has been incredible since he arrived from Elche this summer.
Yeah, he's been phenomenal. He's been a game changer. He's a guy who can take a team and put it on his back. He does so many things well. He controls balls in tight spaces. He forces turnovers, forces fouls. He earns a lot of fouls. I think the key for this game, and we saw in the key versus Philadelphia was Matt Freese in net. He's the type of player, and he's the type of keeper that makes attackers take that extra thought. They get a little tighter around the box, and I think that's going to be a key on Saturday. We saw it for Inter Miami against Nashville, that there was a lot of games where they had huge percentage of shots, but 25-30% on target. That's not going to be good enough for NYCFC. I mean, to beat NYCFC. Against Cincy, they had a lot more focus, and they were higher percentage shots on target, which made it harder for them to for Matt Freese. And I think that's going to be, if Miami comes out and is efficient and gets a lot of shots on target, it's going to be a tough game. But for NYCFC, I think they're banking on Matt Freese being the number one for US.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, because Matt Freese has really, not to say he wasn't good last year, because he was. He's really emerged though this year. A lot of people are starting to recognize how good he is, giving them that recognition. Like you said, he's taken over. He's going to be the starter for the USMNT in 2026. He's been an enforcer in goal for New York City FC. And let's go ahead and get into this matchup: Inter Miami versus New York City FC. So that is we'll talk about X factors for each team, but I think you kind of hit one of mine, Mike and Matt Freese. But Chris, so New York City FC has to go to Inter Miami and play this game on the road. Okay, when Inter Miami finished third place in the Eastern Conference, a lot of people were panicking. They're like, "Oh my God, this means they're not going to be able to, it doesn't run through Miami like it did last year. Can Miami win all these big games on the road?" But the way things have fallen, because New York City beat Philly and they took care of business against Cincinnati, the MLS Cup playoffs now run through Miami. So if they win, everything's going to finish up in South Florida. How big of a deal is that now that Miami has home field advantage to the rest of the playoffs?
Well, I would tell you just knee-jerkingly, it's huge. But NYCFC has been actually winning on the road the entire playoffs. Yeah. Like, they won both games at Charlotte. They lost at home. And then they won against Philadelphia in Chester, right? I mean, the one thing we got going for us is that we've been beating goalkeepers that have been with bigger mustache than slider mustache, and now we meet Matt Freese, who's a clean-shaven mustache. We're going to take him down regardless. At the end of the day, I think what's happening is, and I'll tell you what really stands out to me, in terms of the head-to-head between Inter Miami and NYCFC, NYCFC has had our number for years. We've only won 2 games out of 8 in total. The rest have been 4 ties and 2 other, and I'm sorry, 6 ties. 4 ties and 6 draws. My apologies. We actually won only 2 games. One was a Pozuelo game that was here in Miami. And then the other game that we won was the last game in September, where we won 4-0. But this is the key here. In the last, I'd say 4 games before that, or 3 games, we finished with a draw against NYCFC. So that to me shows a pretty good trajectory against this club. And now you put that with NYCFC missing a key player and Miami hitting their stride at the perfect moment. I feel like this is going to be a recipe for disaster for NYCFC's sort of a road trip, because they've had a hell of a success on the road. But I mean, at some point it's got to give, and we got a lot of goals to give.
Now, Mike, one thing I've realized about sports, man, is that momentum is a hell of a thing. Like, if you've got momentum and you're playing well, that can get you a long way, especially even if a team you're playing against is more talented than you are. And I feel like New York City FC have all this momentum. Are you worried about playing on the road at Miami? I mean, you did just beat Charlotte twice at home, or on the road, excuse me. Like Chris said, you did beat Philadelphia at Philadelphia. Does it worry you at all about having to travel to South Florida for this game?
No, it doesn't worry. I don't think it worries NYCFC at all. I actually wanted to ask Chris a question. Because momentum is a big piece of it, but after beating Cincinnati, do you feel like Miami is going to respect NYCFC, or are they going to be overconfident? Because I think that's where NYCFC is coming into this game, and that's how they approached Charlotte. That's how they approached Philly. Being the underdog, you have to go in there and show some respect to what the other team can do and what they can bring, and then apply your style on top of that. And if Miami comes in there and thinks, oh, this is going to be a pushover, we just put 4 up against Cincy, then I think it's going to be a good game for NYCFC. But if Miami comes in there and respects the talent that NYCFC has, then it'll be an even matchup.
Well, if you ask any coach or players, I'll tell you 10 out of 10 times they're going to tell you they respect the opponent, all that mumbo jumbo, the coach talk, right? But let's not get it twisted here and keep it 1,000, right? I mean, we just finished beating Cincinnati, who had a really good front three until the games actually mattered. And then all of a sudden, you have NYCFC, who looks like a bleeding fish in the ocean at this point, missing out on Martinez. And you guys only won 1-0. So, like, I'm coming in as cocky as hell. I can only imagine how the players are feeling. I mean, they're probably eating all kinds of filet mignon, filling up all week. I'm hoping that they can be able to come in and feel somewhat respectful to the team. But I got to be honest, I don't see that in any way, shape, or form. I think Inter Miami, for sure, as a team, is probably looking at this and saying, we got to just destroy these guys and move on to the next game.
Well, I'll say this too. I think the difference is, and I want to get like predictions and see what you guys think the key to these games for each of your team is to winning. But one thing I will say about the difference between New York City FC and Cincinnati, Chris, is I feel like Pat Noonan has a lot of flaws as a manager, where Pascal is very, very good at making adjustments and countering the opposing team, and these little changes he can make mid game or at any point is just different. So I don't think Inter Miami is going to do what they did to FC Cincinnati in this game. I think it's going to be a very, very hard fought match. I think it's whoever wins is going to have to have earned the win to move on to the MLS Cup final. Now, obviously, like you said, Inter Miami is riding high right now. They just beat Cincinnati 4-0, beat the brakes off of them at their place. And that place was roaring. Like, you could see it on TV that the crowd was into it, and it didn't matter. Inter Miami just absolutely punched them in the mouth and took their lunch money, right? But I think that this one, that's a thing too. You can't be overconfident, because that's when you get caught sleeping, and you can get punched in the mouth as well.
But I think that there's a difference here, because the moment that Inter Miami scored against Cincinnati, you could just see their leaders, Evander and Brenner, just deflate.
Yeah.
And you don't see that very often in NYCFC. Like, they still proceed to play every minute. And what scares me really is the midfield, because the midfield is very tricky with NYCFC. They play very well. And the way that they're going to cover Busquets, to me, matters greatly in this game, because I feel like Busquets could be the key to this game, kind of like how he was in the game against Nashville, the last game against Nashville. So at the same time, I feel like we're going to, have good success, but NYCFC doesn't deflate as easily. So I'm expecting a dogfight for sure. I don't know about you, Mike.
Well, I was going to say the midfield is the big question mark for Pascal Jansen. Again, we talked about the injury to Alonso Martinez. The other big injury was the injury to Andres Pereira in Charlotte, in that deciding game in Charlotte. And he was a key part to the midfield later on in the season. And the wrinkle that Pascal Jansen threw at everybody, because he had Aiden O'Neill suspended for the game against Philadelphia, was he played Kevin O'Toole, the starting left back for most of the season, as a dual pivot with Johnny Shore, who is an 18-year-old who made his debut in February for NYCFC against Miami in Chase Stadium, and that was a huge moment for Johnny Shore, a huge moment for NYCFC, and now Aiden O'Neill is back from suspension. He had yellow card suspension carry over from Charlotte, and it's I think the question is, does Jansen go with experience with Kevin O'Toole after seeing what happened in Philly, or does he go with talent in Johnny Shore? And again, it's slight margins when you're deciding who's more talented. But I think Johnny Shore, can play both sides of the ball a little bit better than Kevin O'Toole can. So that's going to be a big question mark, and that's something that is going to make Mascherano wonder. He's not going to know until an hour before kickoff.
Well, I also want to ask you too, Mike. So getting into the game, what do you think is how does New York City FC win this match? How do they go down to South Florida? What do they need to do to win this game?
The same thing they did against Philly. First of all, they have to score the first goal. That's going to be key. And they have the talent to do it. And you saw it against Philly. What was it? 4 of NYCFC's 5 shots were on target. They didn't create a lot of chances, but the chances they got, they were very efficient, and they all forced saves, and the one went in. And again, you saw that one shot from Fernandez Marcao in the second half from midfield, but it was a tricky enough shot that it had to keep Andre Blake so honest that he pulled his hamstring. So I think that's the first thing, is be efficient, make the right decisions, and then the other key is that back line of Justin Hack and Thiago Martins is huge. And again, Justin Hack started the first game of the season as a holding midfielder, and he eventually moved back after the departure of Burke Risa, and he has been that was another big question mark for Pascal Jansen going into the Philadelphia game with Aiden O'Neill suspended. A lot of people, myself included, thought that Hack was going to step up into the midfield and Raul Gustavo was going to take over that center back role. And Jansen knew better than I did that keeping Hack and Martins was enough to keep the Union off the board. And look, I don't think anyone's expecting NYCFC to go down to Miami and pitch a shutout and get a shutout against Messi. But can you keep it close?
Well, also too, before I get to you, Chris, I want to say as far as X factors for the game, you mentioned Matt Freese. I think he's going to have a big game. When goalkeepers ball out and have good games against Miami, it can really hamper things and make them struggle. We saw Guzan single-handedly beat Inter Miami in 2024 in the first round. So if Matt Freese has a good of a game as we think he can, it can make things very interesting. But my one X factor, or my one X player, I would say, and I'm not trying to take the easy way out, but I do believe this. I think it's Nico Fernandez. He's the best player on the team, and I think you need your best player to step up, especially in these big games. I watched last night Anders Dreyer step up for San Diego FC. That's what Nico Fernandez needs to do for New York City FC. You have to have, Chris mentioned this earlier, all the big players for Cincinnati were no-shows on Saturday night or Sunday. No-shows. Evander, Danke, Brenner, none of them showed up. These are the moments your big-time players have to play if you want to win. So, Mike, real quick, who has to show up for you in order for them to win?
No, you said it. It's Fernandez Marcao, but it's also Maxi Morales. Maxi lights out against Philadelphia. You almost wish that he could play Philly every week in a playoff game, because he'd score 34 goals a season if that was the case. But those two have a great camaraderie. It's him, Augustino Heda, the three Argentinians connected on that goal. I think that's going to be one of those keys. Are they going to be able to elevate themselves to play against the best Argentinian in the world in Messi? And I think they're going to be ready to demonstrate that.
Chris, how does Inter Miami defeat New York City FC to make it to their first ever MLS Cup final?
What I think has to happen is, I think that, look, you mentioned, Mike, about scoring the first goal. The games that we won against NYCFC and the last one against Cincinnati, we scored on the 10th minute, 19th minute, and the 10th minute. The other game where we lost, we scored in the 90th minute, our first goal. So scoring in the beginning definitely is critical. One of the things that a lot of people look at Inter Miami and say, oh, well, it's okay, they can get scored on early and they'll still catch up. That's just because of the firepower, right? Like, the key, I could say it's Lionel Messi, but I think that's pretty obvious. I think the key in this game is going to be Jordi Alba, because he's going to be playing on the same side as Gray, and Gray is a very pacey player. They can be able to catch back up. I think Gray, he plays the right back position, right, Mike?
Yep.
So that's a player that Jordi Alba is going to be seeing from time to time. And I think it's pretty critical. I like Gray as a player. I think he's phenomenal. And I think that that's going to be a key matchup, aside from the one that I mentioned before of Busquets. I don't know what NYC is planning on doing, on, manning somebody up against Busquets, or having some sort of a shadow, sort of a zone for him. But those two players, I think, are probably the keys to the game, for sure, for Inter Miami to come out winning.
So, Chris, real quick, my X factor for Inter Miami, I want to get your X factor too after this. We both know that Luis Suarez has been demoted to the bench, which has been a huge revitalization of this team and their attack. They played a lot better without him. My X factor for this game is Mateo Silvetti. We saw last game against Cincinnati, he balled out. He was composed. He was confident. He did not look like he was 19 years old. And I feel like he's been the biggest difference maker for this team in the last 2 matches. And I think he's going to have to continue that because we know Messi's Messi. He's good. But who around him is stepping up? Who's helping him out? That's what's most important. We saw what Silvetti was able to do and how much easier he made things on Lionel Messi, and he balled out too. So he's my X factor for this game. Who's your X factor for Inter Miami to win this match?
I think the X factor, like I said, it's going to be Jordi Alba. And for the reasons I mentioned before, but I want to kind of touch on the Mateo Silvetti because Silvetti is a critical player. Yeah. And the fact that he came on, I mean, the moment that he came on, everybody in the fan base fell in love with this kid. And he played very minimal minutes and used them effectively. Like, I think his goal to minute ratio was just something wild in the beginning of the time that he started with us. But then he ended up going to play for Argentina, and all of a sudden he was gone for weeks. And you start to see that there's a little bit of an inconsistency in terms of our results. And then now he comes back, and then now Mascherano pulls the trigger, starts him, which is fantastic because in reality, Nashville did us a favor by snitching on us to the MLS. Because now we figured out, hey, we could start this young guy who's scoring goals too. But the difference with Silvetti versus all the other added players like Segovia or Baltasar is that Silvetti feels more comfortable playing at the wing. He feels more comfortable playing sort of in an attacking role. That's the difference with him versus Segovia and Baltasar, because Baltasar and Segovia are more like central, minded players. They're more creative players, passing first and shooting second players. Silvetti is just a bomb waiting to explode. So placed him at the right time. He's hitting super stride right now, has great players to make great passes to him. I think it's going to be huge playoffs for him for sure.
Before we head out, I want to get your guys' score prediction, what you think is going to happen. Mike, we'll start with you first. Who's going to win this game?
I'm going to have to go basic and say it's going to be very similar to how the first game of the season started. It's going to be a 2-2 draw with NYCFC having the advantage with Matt Freese in net for PKs.
All right, Chris. Is Inter Miami get it done?
Look, and Mike, I was gonna tell you that I feel like an Inter Miami game versus NYCFC would bring out this random 2-1 game either side, because I've noticed that it's been sort of low scoring aside from a couple games. I think we're going to beat the bricks off of you guys. I feel like at this point we're hitting such high stride and everything looks beautiful. Listen, 2 weeks ago when we lost against Nashville, I said the whole world was over. It was completely over. But now I'm on a high like I've never been before. And I'm telling you right now, we're probably going to win 4-1. That's my prediction. We're going to win 4-1.
Wow.
Yeah. And the only reason I say 1 is because I actually feel like as a team, NYCFC is better than Cincinnati, even though Cincinnati has all these names up top that can score. But Evander disappears in the playoffs. So there you go with that. I feel like NYCFC can show threats, but I feel like it can be controlled. And I think that we're going to walk away pretty comfortably from this game.
I'll say this. If I'm not going to give my official prediction, I'm going to do that in another video, but I will say this.
6-1.
If you guys, no, not that high, but I'll say if Inter Miami struggle to score early on, I think they could be in trouble, kind of like what you both have alluded to, that they are better when they score early. And the thing about Miami, I always say this, when they score 1, they don't just score 1. They score 2, they score 3, they score 4. They don't ever just score 1 goal, especially when Messi's on the pitch. So it's really going to be who can win the first, 25, 30 minutes of this game and see what happens and see how, because that's how it was in the Cincinnati game. Cincinnati was dominating and then they figured things out and then it really started to turn around for Inter Miami.
I just want to mention one more thing real quick, and just to sort of pay some respect to NYCFC. NYCFC is not a good matchup for Inter Miami. Just like Cincinnati was not a good matchup, we were horrible in history against Cincinnati. And against NYCFC, it's not that much better. It's actually the percentage is worse. So, and we only have 1 out of the last 8 games with Messi that we won. So I mean, I'm tooting my own horn just because of the trajectory we're on. But if I was to look at the numbers, I would be a little bit more nervous if it wasn't for this high that I'm on. But that's what happens with what's going on right now, Mike.
Yeah, what I would worry about for Miami is I would worry about NYCFC dropping back, allowing Messi and Miami to have the ball in the middle of the field, limit their chances, force them to take shots from outside the box, and then hit them on the counterattack. Because I think that's where Miami is going to be exposed, and that's where Charlotte was exposed.
We'll see what happens. It's going to be an interesting game. I think it's going to be a good game regardless. Like I said, I'm going to wait to get my prediction, but I think it's going to be a highly tested, battled game, and we'll see who comes on top to make it to the MLS Cup final. Guys, you both should be super excited. This is a chance to make it to the championship of Major League Soccer. So that's an awesome thing to to happen for either one of your clubs. Before I let you go, we'll start with Mike. Mike, where can the people find your podcast at?
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, and really appreciate a chance to talk to the enemy in this episode. But my podcast is Blue City Radio. We're the longest running NYCFC podcast. We've been around since 2015.
And Chris, where can the people find you and Danny at?
You can find us right here at Battered Herons. It's we do a Inter Miami podcast in English. We also do one in Spanish called Las Garzas. We do an MLS one called Battered MLS. I mean, at this point, we might just do one for, I don't know, for like hockey here in Florida. I don't know. At some point, we probably will. But yeah, check out Mike because he's been on with us before. And thank you so much for having me. Well, it was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you guys both. And I can't wait to see what happens. And we'll have one of you guys back on to preview an MLS Cup final. We'll see who it is. But I appreciate you guys for watching. If you guys like this, make sure you give it a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And hit that little bell notification so you never miss a video. And until next time, guys, I will see you all soon.